Hello everyone, welcome to the Buzz the Prey Manga. Today we continue the latest Global Freeze chapter, rewritten and edited by me in English for a smooth reading experience. All visuals and story flow are personally edited to give you the best manga style storytelling. Support the original creator by checking the official manga. So let's dive right into the today's chapter.
Chapter 2494 Lusui 1. Liang did not give him a second chance to breathe fire. Her knife didn't have any other tricks. She simply returned to the starting point, took a slight breath once more, and firmly planted her feet on the broken rock surface. Her heart calmed down a little more. The blade fell an inch, like a drop of water falling into a deep well, its depths unfathomable. The second, very soft click. The crack ran through the abdominal cavity, across the back, and into the ground. The enormous lava behemoth finally collapsed backward, splashing fire everywhere. The fire in his chest was still struggling, but he could no longer muster a full breath of heat. Zhang gasped for breath, and the fire crowns dimmed one by one. He stared at the seemingly ordinary knife, forcing out a sentence from his throat. "Your knife? How?" Even on his deathbed, he couldn't believe that his incredibly strong body had been so easily severed by such a small knife. Liang sheathed her sword and bowed slightly, as if paying homage to a powerful figure. She remained silent, leaving only the words, "It's not a single cut, but a single thought, a single intention." A single thought can last forever. If you keep something in mind, it will surely resonate. A sword master once said that concentrated will can pierce through stubborn rock, and that is the meaning of the saying. Zhang's giant fist slowly slammed down onto the crack in his chest, powerless to do anything about it. His vision was blurred by the falling fire rain, and all he could hear was the low rumble of flowing lava. He wanted to stand up again, fight again, and breathe fire again, but every fire vein in his body felt as if it had been pierced by a fine needle, and he could no longer gather any strength. Liang turned around, her back view clean and neat. The scabbard gently touched her leg armor, making a crisp ding sound, like the end of a long breath. She didn't look back at the fallen giant shadow, but kept her step steady, respecting her opponent and her own blade. In the distance, Yang Xinshin gathered her data and spoke calmly. Her sword energy and his fist were always only half an inch apart. When the rock armor thickened to its limit and its structure was at its tightest, it was actually the most brittle. That was the moment she seized. Zhang Yi nodded in satisfaction. In terms of attack power, she is gradually approaching Li Changgong's level. In terms of overall combat strength, she has surpassed Li Changgong. The fire rain was still falling. The thin crack in the ground stretched from Zhang's chest to Tenjong behind him, as if someone had drawn a line with a ruler. The intense heat dissipated on both sides of that line, eventually leaving only wisps of hot air shimmering in the air. The strong have finally fallen silent. Deep within the sea of fire, Lu Sui walked up the lava steps, his 10 fingers slightly spread, and thin, bright red lines stretched from his fingertips, like shooting stars stretched straight in the night. He looked at his opponent, a black tabby cat no bigger than a palm. Although it was the first time he had seen such a creature on the land, he found it quite unusual. "Is this my opponent? It's so small, looks fluffy, and is very lazy. Can it really fight?" Even Lu Sui couldn't help but have some doubts. Huah stretched and yawned, then sharpened its claws on the rocky ground. After doing all this, it finally raised its head and looked at the firefly. The languor in his eyes vanished completely, leaving behind only human shrewdness and naked fighting spirit. Huah's superpower index has reached a terrifying 36,000 points. In terms of pure combat strength, he is second only to Zhang Yi and Yang Xinshin. There was nothing they could do. Zhang Yi liked to feed it all the time, and as long as it kept eating, it could keep growing. Its intelligence is now on par with, and even surpasses, that of some humans. Meow. A cat's roar resounded through the heavens and earth, and Huah's body suddenly grew to a gigantic size, becoming a behemoth over 200 meters tall. With a loud bang, a pair of enormous black wings unfolded on its back, causing a massive storm to erupt. Two black iron tails swept across its back like pythons. The black and gold demonic armor closed along the shoulder blades, and the nanoblade at the end swayed gently, drawing out a crescent-shaped cold light. Seeing Huah's fighting stance, Lu Sui's eyes remained calm, carrying an innate sense of superiority. A beast-like alien? No, to be precise, it was originally a beast. Well tamed. But once it enters my fireline domain, any creature will be neatly shredded. As Lu Sui spoke, faint but dense red lights appeared in the air around him, like the laser network protecting treasures in a movie. The heat energy is condensing and spreading in the air, poised to unleash a fatal blow at any moment. Huah simply tilted her head slightly and listened intently. It listens to the direction of the heat flow, to the tension and vibration of each wire. Felines have extremely keen senses. They can detect even the slightest abnormality. The next instant, Lu Sui raised his palm. Feel the pain of being cut into countless strands by endless superheated threads. Thousands of fire threads burst forth from fingertips, weaving a giant net in the air. Each line carries heat and tension, slicing the rock face into thin slices as smooth as a mirror as it brushes against the rock wall. Burning veins weaving heaven. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with red lines. Huah pounced suddenly. It didn't dash in a straight line, but instead leaped between rocky corners and ruins in a feline S shape, stepping on 9 different spots, its body appearing as 9 afterimages. The fire line grazed past them, and a ring of tiny sparks ignited around the edge of their armor, only to be instantly extinguished by the automatic cooling layer. Zhang Yi was more concerned about Huah's battle. After all, it's not surprising to care more about one's own pet. No wonder they sent Huah to deal with this guy. Cats are experts at playing with yarn. Only Huah's reaction speed and agility can easily handle such a troublesome opponent. Lu Sui's gaze sharpened. Not bad speed, but you can't escape my net. In his hands, the red thermal threads were manipulated swiftly, like cat's cradle. Throughout the space, the dense red threads appeared extremely chaotic, but in reality, they were perfectly orderly, woven into a huge net to completely envelop and strangle Huah. Huah is incredibly fast, galloping on all fours, and possesses the ability to fly. Like a clever thief dodging a laser network, she always manages to slip through the gaps. But at a certain moment, Huah's body suddenly stopped in midair. Its heterochromatic eyes narrowed, staring intently at Lu Sui, who was manipulating the silk threads to strangle it in the distance. Suddenly, it raised its head, gathered strength in its chest, and its vocal cords exploded. Roar. A thunderous roar. The sound waves overlapped in layers amidst the sea of fire. The air seemed to be rippled by the claws of a ferocious beast, and all the fire lines shifted at the same instant. The tension of the netting was disrupted, and dozens of red wires snapped with a snap, exploding into rings of sparks in midair. Using a beast's roar to create a powerful sound wave to sever my thermal energy threads? Interesting. With a flick of his wrist, Lu Sui instantly replaced the broken wire, and a new wire shot out from the gap in his armor. With a slight tremor of his fingertips, the net closed up. But my silk threads can cover the entire lava river. They are endless. Chapter 2495 Lu Sui 2. The Wheel of Severance. With a sharp shout, Lu Sui caused the red net to converge into a massive cutting wheel, which descended from above with terrifying spin pressure. Huah kicked off with her hindquarters. It leaped directly at the red wheel, its tail blade sweeping across, slicing through 3 sections. The nanoblade tore a gap in the closed mesh. At the same time, it changed tracks in midair. With a twist of its waist, its 2 front claws grabbed the 2 fire wires and ripped them apart. Sizzle. The netting was unbalanced at the center, the spinning was broken up, and the broken threads flew wildly, like a sudden rain. Lu Sui raised an eyebrow and suddenly brought his 10 fingers together. All the loose threads were hooked back, turning into 100 red needles that barbed and pounced back. Huah's pupils suddenly contracted. It did not retreat. The moment it fell, it lowered its head, arched its back, and the black and gold nail plate automatically popped out a slight arc, forcefully guiding the dense needles to the nail surface. The fire needles slid across the curved surface, leaving behind thin red trails that covered the ground in a dense array. Still holding on? Lu Sui sneered. Then let's finish this. He held his arms out straight, with all 10 fingers spread. Full power. Thousands of red lines poured down like a torrential rain, forming 3 layers of fire curtains, blocking every escape route for Huah from different angles. Huah's ears twitched suddenly. It heard. There was a very short reversal gap between the 3 layers of fire curtain.
Now.
Huah sprinted along the ground, her limbs moving in rapid succession, her tail blade raised high like a crescent moon. The instant the first curtain fell, it leaped up from between the 2 protruding rock corners, perfectly inserting itself into the reversal gap. The second layer of the curtain tumbled down, and it flipped in midair, its tail blade pressing down to sever the 2 main traction lines. The fire curtain's central control instantly slowed down. The third layer of curtain crashed down. Huah didn't slow down. Instead, she charged straight in with her powerful physique. When the corner of the axle collided with the main beam, bursting out with a blinding white light. At the same time, it opened its mouth and unleashed a second roar, the aftershocks pushing the remaining energy away from the center. Lu Sui was stunned for a moment. For the first time, he had lost complete control of the wire network. The flowers are almost upon me. Its forepaws moved like lightning, slashing left and right in quick succession, with 3 claws landing, specifically targeting the 3 key points of Lu Sui's shoulder, elbow, and wrist. The sound of metal clashing against metal exploded continuously, and the source of the fire was continuously paralyzed by the shockwaves. Looking for my weakness? Lu Sui's eyes turned cold, and a sudden light appeared behind him. One after another, fiery red spools spun rapidly, trying to throw Huah back into the distance again. Huah didn't retreat, and with a sudden twist of its tail blade, it coiled around a bundle of red thread like a lasso, and then twisted its waist. In that instant of loss of balance, Huah's fangs had already bitten into the nail seam on the side of his neck, and the beast's eyes had already flashed with a chilling, killing intent. Snap! As Huah's tiger teeth exerted force, the nail seam split open. Lu Sui roared, and the entire fire net converged into a giant spear, piercing straight into Huah's chest. Huah braced herself with her claws, her body leaning backward in a very short distance, the spear tip grazing her breastplate and leaving a deep gash. Its iron tail flips backward. Clang! The fire spears were deflected and exploded into a shower of red rain. Huah landed, her center of gravity shifted, and she pounced forward, using all 4 claws at once, so fast that only a trail of black shadows remained. It doesn't aim for a fatal blow, but instead inflicts continuous damage on the same crack. 3 beats. 5 beats. 7 beats. Each strike pushed Lu Sui's armor outwards by half a step. Finally, it tilted its head back, took a deep breath, and unleashed its third roar, its strongest attack. Dark energy condensed deep in its throat, then erupted into a powerful beam of destruction, shooting fiercely towards Lu Sui. The dense fire net was violently impacted and completely thrown into chaos, like a tangled ball of yarn. Lu Sui's 10 fingers faltered. A huge flaw had appeared in his ability. Whoosh! The gap in the defense did not escape Huah's sharp eyes. In a flash in midair, it passed through the layers of red lines and arrived in front of Lu Sui. Huah's sharp claws slashed into the cracked nail, a flash of cold light passing by. Lu Sui's spine stiffened, and his chest and shoulder blades were forcibly cut in 2. He stared in disbelief at the half of his arm armor that had fallen off, trying to reconnect the threads, but he could no longer muster any tension. How? He wondered how his incredibly intricate network of red lines could have no effect on this land creature. How could he know that cats are natural experts at playing with balls of yarn? Before he could finish speaking, his upper body lost its balance, and he slammed one knee to the ground. The fire raged wildly, like a headless snake, before finally going out. Huah let out a breath, licked the sparks from the tip of its claws, and flicked its tail blade cleanly and swiftly. Meow. Another battlefield. Chisha stood atop the molten sand dune, his palms clasped together. The sand flowing from his palms, like a fine waterfall, instantly transformed into a gleaming arc shield, within which bubbles slowly rose. He looked around, his voice low but deep. "The strongest among you, come out. Don't let the weak die in vain." Deng Shintong and Bailey Chongqing walked out side by side, with the fuying troops lined up on both sides. Neither Yang Xinxin nor Lu Karen made a move against their last opponent. After all, one of these two controls a super battleship, the Sky Sea Fortress, and the entire Mechanical Legion. The other's strength has reached an ability index of 48,000 points. Their actions against a mere white bishop seem like an overreaction. Therefore, they dispatched the Shadow Squad to surround and eliminate this person. Bailey Chongqing slung the pulse hammer over his shoulder, but his smile vanished. This person is not easy to deal with. We must be careful against an opponent of the white bishop level. Deng Shintong narrowed his eyes, a thin layer of light reflecting in his pupils. Miss Yang has already said that his power depends on the molten sand underground. As long as his supply of molten sand is cut off, his shield will shatter. The power of blazing sand is to pulverize extremely hot rocks into hard sand, which can then be used to attack enemies. This kind of molten sand is inexhaustible in the sea of lava, with high temperature and strong destructive power. Chisha raised his hand and pointed, causing a torrent of sand to surge from the ground. "Since you're not coming, then I'll make my move first." Molten sand domain. In an instant, the ground seemed to come alive, with sand walls, sand waves, and sand pillars rising up, pushing layer upon layer of vitrified thin plates forward. Each thin sheet bends under high temperature, reflecting a blinding white light, like a wall of mirrors. The sand crown tide rises. A blinding white light. Superior. Bailey Chongqing roared. He wouldn't let the enemy gain the upper hand. Bailey Chongqing's foot sank, and he stomped hard on the ground. He slammed the massive metal pulse hammer in his hand toward the distant blazing sand. The first strike. Boom. The circular shockwave expanded wildly. The sand wall collapsed on the spot, and thin glass panels flew everywhere. The second blow. The shock wave overlapped with the preceding wave, and the sand waves were forced back, revealing the flow hole underneath. Stop the flow. With a roar, he smashed the third hammer blow into the edge of the hole, causing the rock vein to crack and the molten sand to flow at a sudden slowdown. Chisha's brow twitched, and he clasped his hands together. The realm of molten glass. The scattered glass slabs around them fused together again in midair, curling back into a giant bowl that completely enveloped Bailey Chongqing. The bowl walls thickened rapidly, and the high temperature poured back in, threatening to turn him into a terracotta warrior. "Trying to trap me? It's not that simple." Bailey Chongqing grinned as the Sky Sea armor activated, making him even more powerful. Chapter 2496 Lusui 3. Faced with the blockade of the blazing sand, Bailey Chongqing roared and, holding the pulse hammer, suddenly lifted it upwards. "Open it for me." A powerful and heavy impact. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the glass bowl's surface. Set's ability grants him incredible, monstrous strength. Again, he exerted force with both arms, his muscles taut like cables, and the pulse hammer struck 3 times in succession, shattering the glass layer by layer. An interesting ability. The fiery sand voice remained calm. "But how long can you hold on?" He changed the direction of the sand in his palm, and the bowl wall was instantly renewed, with the second and third layers continuously sealing it. Chisha began to exert his power, and Bailey Chongqing finally could not withstand the opponent's strength. After all, the difference in superpower index was obvious. At the critical moment, Deng Shintong took a step forward and slashed forward with his sword, Griffith. The great Sumeru illusionary realm, open. The light suddenly became extremely dazzling, an absolute white without a trace of impurity. Centered on the blazing sand, the stray light within a radius of about 1 mile was drawn away, and the radiance no longer reached directly, leaving only the outline of temperature and white light and shadow. The visual reference is stripped away, and the reflection angles of the glass are completely messed up. Even in Chisha's eyes, he saw a strange illusion. The horrific scene of his wife and children being slaughtered, and heard their cries for help and their wails. With a slight pause at the tip of the blazing sand, the shape of the molten sand flow became misaligned, and many plates fell to the ground halfway through melting, smashing into thick stalactites. Although he knew it was all an illusion, the illusion was too real, and he couldn't calm his mind, causing cracks to appear in his abilities. Can't see clearly? Deng Shintong's figure flashed, and one after another, magnificent and invisible prisms unfolded in the surrounding space. His figure moved between the prisms, and white four-pointed stars lit up one after another, like beautiful fireworks blooming in a clear sky, etched by the heavens. Each starburst was chosen at a structural point of the sand shield, not by brute force, but by cutting out subtle pressure-reducing seams. Dozens of starlight beams fell, rewriting the force distribution across the entire sand shield. Now's the time. Charge with me, Bailey Chongqing shouted, swinging his pulse hammer like a windmill as it swept diagonally across the sand shield. Zhuge Qingting, Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, Lu Dehai, and others all attacked together, targeting that one flaw. Bang! The sand shield exploded from the middle, like a thick piece of glass shattering, scattering fragments everywhere. Chisha slowly closed her eyes. Since she could no longer see, she would shut herself off. Based on his knowledge of the lava fields, he was able to determine the location of his opponent by observing the flow of hot air in the air. He turned his palm downwards, and the sand flowed straight into the ground. Quicksand abyss. The ground suddenly caved in, and the shadowy ranks sank beneath their feet as swirling vortexes dragged them down. This is his most terrifying killing field, trapping an entire team into super-hot and rapidly spinning quicksand, where even thick armor would be ground to dust in no time. Hold your balance, and don't fall into the quicksand. Bailey Chongqing slammed his pulse hammer into the ground, the shockwave reversing. Instantly, a ring of hard ground appeared beneath his feet, providing footholds for his teammates. Deng Shintong did not retreat. He gently tapped the tip of his sword downwards, and a transparent prism blade embedded itself into the sand layer, like a stop block for the quicksand. The vortex was divided at the rings of prisms, and the suction force was greatly reduced. Lu Dehai, Deng Shintong said in a deep voice. A shadow streaks by. Lu Dehai glided across the sand like a fish in a cool breeze, flashing past the feet of the fiery sand. He didn't hit anyone. He just slashed 3 times underground, cutting off 3 sand supply channels. The supply of molten sand was briefly interrupted, which directly caused the ground to lighten. For the first time, Chisha's brow furrowed tightly. The flow of sand in his palm noticeably slowed. It's not over yet. In the distance, Xiao Honglian looked up, flames blooming in her palm. She wasn't trying to ignite them, but rather to absorb the heat energy from the molten sand. She forcefully lowered the temperature at the edge of the quicksand, turning the syrupy red molten sand into real glass, so brittle that it would shatter at the slightest touch. Xing Tian's army. Xing Tian raised his battle axe high, unleashing a thick blue light upon the ranks. Strength, speed, and perception all surged. Rush. Bailey Chongqing replaced the pulse hammer with a sweeping attack, like swinging a giant gate, and swept a path through the edge of the quicksand, allowing the shadow warriors to rush out of the trap on the hard ground. Chisha took a deep breath of hot air, clasped his hands together again, and attempted to reconstruct the entire domain. The sandstorm domain. Rise again. The thin light in Deng Shintong's eyes grew even colder. Every time you construct a domain, you need the flow of sand from the Earth's core as a supply, and you also need a stable temperature difference and a reference point in your field of vision. Once we understand how your abilities work, you're actually full of flaws in our eyes. He exhaled softly and held his sword horizontally. Great Sumeru noise. The blazing sand has lost its light and relies on the direction of the heat flow in the air to determine the opponent's attack and location. However, Deng Shintan took direct action, using the prism etched by the heavens as a direction to create massive energy noise. The position of each prism unleashed powerful energy interference. This directly caused Qixia to lose his judgment of everything around him, and his ability releases could not accurately hit the target. But I haven't lost yet. He spread his palms out, the sand flow reversed, and a torrential downpour of sand poured down. Glass rain curtain. Every drop of sand melts upon landing, splashing up circles of sharp glass flowers. This is his wide-area sealing technique. Good timing. Bailey Chongqing looked up and laughed, then suddenly slammed the pulse hammer into the ground, leaving himself completely barehanded with his arms clasped together. Come on! The moment the sandstorm began to fall, he roared and opened both arms as if drawing a longbow to its fullest extent. Iron Fist Bombardment. He threw a punch at incredibly fast speed, his fist, as big as a clay pot, towards the air. The continuous bombardment, exceeding the speed of sound, created a massive wave of air in front of them. The sound waves and the powerful waves collided in a short burst, shattering all the glass flowers at his feet that were about to solidify into powder before they could take shape. He used the most brutal methods at his disposal to fight back against this indiscriminate attack. A great opportunity. Deng Shintan moved slightly and appeared to the right of the blazing sand. He unleashed 3 consecutive 4-pointed star strikes, slashing at the molten sand shield behind him. There, the fiery sand, which was invisible and had lost its ability to sense, revealed a flaw. The most pitiful thing is that he was completely unaware of his own flaws. At this moment, he was like a blind and deaf person. Click, click, click. The shield wall protected by blazing sand developed huge cracks in front of the exploding 4-pointed star. He frowned and hurriedly began using molten sand to rebuild the wall. But Bailey Chongqing had already taken a step forward, his fist slamming into the unhealed gap. Bang! Main's shield shattered. Sandstorm erupted. The blazing sand was finally forced to retreat half a step. His brows furrowed tightly, and he was no longer calm. Why do they know my weaknesses so well? Could it be that there's a traitor among us? Here ends today's chapter. I hope you liked it. Kindly do also subscribe to my gaming channel. I have to Fina a way to survive. Thanks.